The grand hall of Vakerlon shimmered with the cold, clinical elegance of a species that had never known dirt. Curved silver pillars reached into a glass-like ceiling where stars burned faintly behind reinforced crystal. Every surface gleamed. Every breath echoed. The scent was sterile, ozone and arrogance. Aliens of 50 worlds lined the arena's concentric steps like judges at a cosmic talent show, each draped in ceremonial garb from their own homeworlds. Feathered tentacles, mirrored armor, bioluminescent scales. At the center stood a raised disk, pulsing faintly with anti-gravity fields. On it perched the Zorthari Emperor Vakerlon, 12 feet of jointed limbs and chitin-plated disdain, a monarch with compound eyes the color of fresh oil spills. He was flanked by his court, twitching advisors, a whispering translator pod, and a quartet of armored guards whose pulse rifles hummed softly in anticipation. Across the disk, walking without hurry or fear, came Earth's diplomatic party. There were only 3 of them. General Cambria Ward led the way, heels clicking on the pristine floor with a sound far too human for the room's tastes. She wore a practical, dark gray pantsuit with a high collar and understated brass buttons, Earth's version of regal. Her hair, silver-streaked and tied back, added to her air of restrained danger. She held a steaming mug of black coffee in one hand, which she sipped as though unaware of the 1,000 alien eyes tracking her every movement. Behind her shuffled Ambassador Peck, shorter, rounder, with a receding hairline and the energy of a man who'd accepted death as inevitable but still insisted on snacks. He carried a leather satchel that crinkled every time he moved. Somewhere inside, a bag of trail mix rustled with quiet rebellion. Trailing them both was Lieutenant Sura, a silent woman with a gloved hand on her belt and a gaze like a measuring tape. She scanned the hall without expression, memorizing exits and potential weapons in the room. Not that she'd need either. Cambria reached the edge of the platform and stopped. She took another sip of coffee. The translator orb floated closer, emitting a chime like shattered glass reforming. The High Emperor Vakerlon of the Zorthari Ascendancy welcomes the delegation from Earth, it intoned. May this parley bring about enlightenment and peace between our civilizations. Peck bowed slightly. Cambria nodded with all the warmth of a glacier. We are honored, she said. Always a delight to meet those who assume they understand us. Vakerlon shifted slightly, the grinding of his leg joints filling the chamber like distant thunder. Your kind walks upright and dares dress in the skins of predators, the Emperor said in his own tongue. The orb translated without inflection. We have studied your broadcasts, your war records, your obsession with sarcasm. You are interesting. Peck popped a peanut into his mouth. We aim to please. The Emperor ignored him. His gaze locked on Cambria, and his next words were more deliberate. Do you presume to speak as equal? Cambria tilted her head, considering her next sip. No, she said. I presume to speak as a survivor. The chamber shifted, subtly. Muscles tensed, appendages coiled. Somewhere, a Quarn diplomat hissed in its native dialect. Vakerlon leaned forward. Survival, he echoed. A quaint goal. We have transcended such needs. Your species is transitional. You burn bright, but briefly. Like mating insects. Peck whispered. Did he just call us horny fireflies? Cambria didn't answer. She stepped forward. My Emperor, she said, voice soft and pleasant as rainfall. You invited us here to discuss peace. If your intent is to insult us, we can reschedule the summit until you've finished preening. There was a collective inhale from the chamber. Someone dropped a crystal glass. An ambassador from the Ver Coalition choked on her own saliva. Even the translator orb paused, confused. Vakerlon clicked, a deep, resonant chuckle. I admire your bravado, human. It will look well on you in chains. And then he moved. Not fast, but with the calculated menace of someone who knew size was its own weapon. He loomed over Cambria, towering. A clawed limb reached out, not to strike, but to touch her face, dismissively, like one might test the texture of a mushroom. And that was when she slapped him. It wasn't loud. It wasn't wild. It was surgical. Her open palm cracked against the Emperor's left mandible with a precision that sent a shock through his central nervous cluster. His left eye twitched. 1,000 chitin plates rippled down his spine in surprise. His back leg gave slightly, just enough to betray imbalance. The chamber fell utterly still. The translator orb stuttered and rebooted. Vakerlon reeled, not from pain, but from confusion. His neural antenna flickered. Peck dropped his trail mix. Lieutenant Sura didn't move, though one corner of her mouth twitched. Cambria calmly took another sip of coffee. "Oh dear," she said. "Cultural misstep, was it? We humans use touch to assert clarity." That was a firm no, thank you. Every alien in the hall shifted. Some gasped. A few backed away from the disk entirely. The Emperor stood frozen, locked in a recursive loop of biological disbelief. In his culture, a touch to the mandible was a declaration of superiority. A slap? A declaration of dominance. Cambria turned slightly, glancing at the alien council seated beyond. "Does anyone else require clarification, or shall we proceed?" The silence lingered, thick and trembling. Peck coughed once. "Right, well, first agenda item, resource trade corridors." An insectoid from the Zelvian conglomerate rose from its seat and left the room, muttering prayers to a sun god no one else believed in. The Emperor slowly straightened. He did not speak. His translator pod floated near but offered no words. His antennae curled tight against his exoskeleton, a sign of stunned subservience in Zorthari biology. His guards did not move. Cambria turned to leave. As she passed the line of Imperial guards, one flinched slightly. She looked up at him with a smile. "Please don't take this personally. You've all been very polite." The three humans exited the hall at a leisurely pace, the doors hissing closed behind them with a sigh like a deflated ego. The moment they were alone in the corridor, Peck finally exhaled. "I think I peed a little," he whispered. Cambria handed him a packet of tissues from her coat pocket. "Plan A never survives the handshake." Sura tapped her earpiece. "Extraction ship is inbound. Earth Command wants confirmation. Was the slap necessary?" Cambria didn't hesitate. Essential. Behind them, alarms began to wail in Zorthari. Not an alert, something stranger. Reverent. A psionic frequency spike that translated roughly to, "A goddess walks among us." Back aboard the ever-quiet, Earth stealth diplomatic cruiser orbiting discreetly on the far side of the Red Dwarf, General Cambria stepped into the secure command chamber. Holograms flickered to life, faces of Earth's Strategic Command, naval admirals, economic ministers, and the president of the Terran Federation. A moment passed in silence. Then the president, a woman with half-moon glasses and a Texas drawl, grinned. "You really slapped him?" Cambria nodded once. "Mandible and all." Laughter erupted across the network. "Phase 1?" asked Admiral Singh. "Complete," Cambria confirmed. The president's smile faded into something colder. "Good. Let's see how the galaxy reacts when the monkey bares its teeth." Across a dozen star systems, alien intelligence networks scrambled to reassess. The Terran psychological profile was rewritten 3 times. Dozens of spy satellites were repositioned to monitor Earth. One panicked ambassador to the Gluvaxi Empire tried to flee his post entirely, claiming Earth had weaponized embarrassment. Meanwhile, in the privacy of his meditation chamber, Emperor Vakerlon stood motionless before a ceremonial mirror. A faint red outline still marked his left mandible. He did not speak. He did not eat. He merely stared. A servant entered with caution and asked what he wished to do next. The Emperor answered in a voice low and hoarse. "We must renegotiate everything." Back aboard Everquiet, Cambria changed into a more comfortable sweater, brewed herself another cup of coffee, and stared out at the starfield. Peck sat nearby, sorting through his trail mix. "You know," he said, "I read somewhere that a chimpanzee once tore a guy's face off because he smiled too much." Cambria didn't look away from the stars. "We didn't descend from monkeys, Peck," she said. "We survived the ones that did." The stars didn't blink, but they watched. And somewhere, behind the smiles and entreaties and polite nods, humanity began to tighten the net. Quietly, efficiently, like a species that never forgot how to hunt. The system confirms that the word count functionality is accurate. I'll now write section 2, humans smile with their teeth, with a precise word count of 2,500 words, maintaining strong narrative flow, character development, and rising stakes. The stars over Tarnus, 6 blinked like nervous eyes, watching the galaxy lean back in its chair and reevaluate everything it thought it knew about Earth. The transmission of the slap, a 10-second loop showing General Cambria Ward delivering a polite, devastating correction to Emperor Vakerlon, was already dissected by a dozen interstellar think tanks. It went viral across 3 trade networks, interpreted by one warrior priesthood as a mating ritual and by another as a declaration of blood-right conquest. One thing was universally agreed upon: humans were no longer to be mocked. Within hours of the summit, the galactic temperature shifted. On the bridge of the ever-quiet, Cambria sat with her legs crossed, boots polished, mug steaming. Her sweater, soft charcoal knit, bore no insignia. Earth had long since learned that subtlety intimidated more than banners. Her eyes scanned the scrolling messages from Terran embassies now flooded with hesitant, reworded inquiries from former adversaries. Peck leaned in from the corner, where he had built a sort of edible nest from protein bars and vacuum-sealed nuts. So, not that I'm complaining, but do you think the slap might have been too much? Cambria didn't look away from the screen. No. It's just that the Zorthri ambassador is now demanding psychological analysis of our entire species. And someone sent us a crate of ceremonial silk from the Thurn Collective. I think they think we're royalty now. They're not wrong, she replied, tapping her finger against a line of code. We just wear our crowns on the inside. The bridge's AI pinged a soft alert, and Lieutenant Sura entered silently, carrying a holopad. New intel from the Black Net. 13 major empires have raised Earth's threat classification by 3 levels. 1 minor species has declared us gods. Peck blinked. Which one? The Siki. They now refer to humans as the kind ones who bite. He nodded slowly. I mean, that's fair. Sura handed the pad to Cambria. There's more. The Zorthri have reclassified their border patrols. They're fortifying, not offensively, defensively. I think the Emperor's shaken. He should be, Cambria murmured. Phase 2 begins now. She stood and left the bridge, boots whispering across the floor like an omen. Down in the lower deck, behind biometric locks and walls lined with carbon-dampening foam, was the Earth Tactical Command Vault, a misnomer, since it contained no weapons. Just ideas. Holograms sparked to life. Star charts danced. Files decrypted. Each contained observations, patterns, and behavior logs of galactic empires who had laughed at Earth's late entrance to interstellar diplomacy. Earth, patient and quiet, had been watching. And it had remembered. Cambria activated the first file, marked Vakerlon, Behavioral Tics. A video played of the Emperor twitching each time someone mentioned chaos theory. Another file showed the proximity range at which his guards reacted to sudden motion. She filed it away. Data was war's kindest weapon. It didn't bleed, but it made others do so very efficiently. As the files reorganized themselves, Cambria's mind wandered briefly to the last time she'd been underestimated. The Lunar Peace Accords. 3 of her finest had died when the alien dignitary they trusted detonated a betrayal-coded weapon disguised as a handshake protocol. Earth had responded diplomatically, of course, with a communications virus that reversed the target's linguistic centers, causing civil unrest so severe their own populace overthrew them. She hadn't slapped anyone that day. She regretted it now. Back on the bridge, Peck adjusted his comms headset. We're getting a ping from the Delari Enclave. They want to meet. Strictly for cultural exchange. Which means spying. You going? Cambria returned just in time to hear it. No. Let them stew. The more they guess, the more they believe. The AI interjected softly. Incoming secure message. Earth Command. Cambria stepped to the center dais. A soft glow, and the president of the Terran Federation materialized, seated behind her oak desk as if she ran a library, not a planet. "General Ward," she greeted, tone casual but undercut with tension. "Madam President," Cambria returned, equally calm. "We've been watching the transmissions. Some are calling it the most strategic act of diplomacy since the Terran Cold War." Cambria gave no sign of satisfaction. "I prefer the term controlled escalation. It tells a better story." The President leaned forward, her voice lowering. "The Zorthari are fragmenting. Some of their own minor systems are reaching out, asking if we're taking applications for allies. Tell them we're always open to friends who understand reciprocity," Cambria said. "And remind them that Earth doesn't lead with teeth. But it doesn't mind showing them." The transmission ended. The room went still. Peck stretched from his console. "You ever wonder if maybe we should have gone with the whole singing diplomats in robes vibe?" "Humanity tried robes," Cambria said. "Then someone tried to set them on fire." The alert board blinked. A new signal. Sura frowned at the reading. "Encrypted burst from Tarnus Prime. One of the Zorthari fleet captains. Unofficial. Wants to talk." Peck raised an eyebrow. "Isn't Tarnus Prime neutral territory?" "It was," Cambria said, "before we smiled too wide." She gave the order to accept. The hollow display shimmered. A Zorthari, younger than the Emperor, armor less ornate, appeared. His mandibles twitched, not in aggression but nervous calculation. "I am Captain Tilvax. I speak only for myself," he began. "Good," Cambria said. "I prefer clarity." Tilvax hesitated. "Your actions have destabilized centuries of political posture." Cambria sipped her coffee. "I accept your thanks." He twitched again. "You are not as we believed. Few threats are. That's why they work. What do you want?" "Balance," she said. "Freedom to operate without condescension. Reciprocity of respect. Peace if we must. Partnership if we can. But subjugation is off the table." Tilvax considered this. "You wear civility like armor. Better than wearing armor like civility." Silence. Finally, the captain said, "I will speak with others." Quietly. Cambria nodded once. "And Captain?" "Yes." "We haven't even started." The transmission cut. Peck stood, stretching. "You know, if this were a movie, this is where the music would swell and the traitor would start sweating." Sura folded her arms. "There are no traitors yet. Just listeners." Cambria turned back toward the starfield, where light from distant systems crept across glass. Earth was still small, still young by galactic terms. But it had grown teeth while others slept. And now, everyone had heard the crunch. She reached for the next file, marked only with a red triangle. A new plan. A final contingency. The Echo Protocol. On the surface, it was a communications filter. In reality, it was the most subtle trap ever devised. A mimic virus embedded in Earth's diplomatic channels that could impersonate alien command signals. Every species that had ever taught humans how to interface with their systems had unknowingly given them the keys to their back doors. It was untriggered, unused, but it existed, and it waited. Sura stepped forward. "Command wants to know if we're ready to activate." Cambria stared at the symbol. "No," she said. "We don't use the knife unless someone pulls ours first." Peck looked up. "What do we use?" Cambria smiled, slow and bright. "Our manners." 3 days later, a new summit was announced. This time, it was hosted not by the Zorthari, but by the VRKNA, a neutral species known for impartiality and fungal cuisine. Delegates from 12 major powers were invited. Earth, to the galaxy's quiet horror, accepted. Cambria's shuttle landed with no fanfare. She exited dressed not in a military suit, nor a robe, but in simple Earth business attire, her badge small, her smile sharp. Every alien delegate gave her wide berth. The hall was round, less ostentatious than Vakerland's theater, but no less tense. The Emperor did not attend. His public schedule had shifted suddenly. Instead, his advisors sat rigid and silent. Across from them, various species of different creeds and sizes watched Cambria as if she were a tiger in a tea shop. She took her seat, said nothing. The silence stretched. Then one delegate, a long-necked diplomat from the Haraxan Trade Compact, leaned forward. "We have reconsidered the assumptions we previously made about your species," he said. Cambria inclined her head. "How gracious. And in the spirit of cooperation," he continued, "we propose a review of mutual defense understandings." "Of course," Cambria said, "but let's be clear, we don't need defending. What we want is trust." Another delegate, one with a voice like wind over glass, said, "Is it true you possess a weapon that mimics command authority?" Peck, from behind her, popped open a protein bar and chewed loudly. Cambria replied, "It's true that humanity has studied, listened, adapted. Is that a yes?" Cambria folded her hands. "That's a warning." A tremor passed through the room. One of the Zorthari advisors cleared their throat. "If Earth continues down this path, it may find itself isolated." Cambria's tone cooled. "Earth spent 200 years isolated. We called it the Dark Age. You know what we did during that time? We prepared. We learned to fight in silence. And when we came into the light, we were better at war than we'd ever been at peace." No one moved. No one dared. She leaned in slightly. "Don't mistake our politeness for pacifism. Humans smile with their teeth. And you're only now realizing what those are for." Outside the hall, the stars blinked again. A storm was coming. But it wore nice shoes and carried a clipboard. And it smiled. Tarnus Prime loomed ahead like a cracked halo over a dead world, a once sacred neutral ground now reduced to political triage. Its orbital station, shaped like an open circle of shattered stone, bore the scars of 1,000 failed treaties. The galaxy still called it neutral, but no one trusted it. That made it perfect for Earth's next move. The ever-quiet docked without ceremony. No flags. No music. Just the soft hiss of atmosphere seals and the cold calculation of Terran footfalls echoing down metal corridors. General Cambria Ward stepped off the shuttle with her usual calm. Her hair pulled back, her slate-gray coat unadorned save for the faint, faded emblem of the old Earth Unity Corps. She wore it like an old scar, proud, subtle, unspoken. Flanking her were Sura, ever silent, her gait light and lethal, and Ambassador Peck, whose backpack of snacks swung with every step. His face held its usual mild confusion, the kind that hid deadly precision. Between them, they embodied the human contradiction: grace, wit, and a complete absence of hesitation when faced with the need for destruction. The station's interior was lit by long strips of dying blue light, humming with flickers of age. Tarnus Prime had not been truly maintained in decades. It was a remnant, a stage where empires came to pretend they still believed in diplomacy. And today, that illusion would serve Earth's purpose perfectly. Inside the main summit chamber, a circular room of stone and steel, the delegates of 12 starfaring civilizations waited. There was no throne here, no central dais, just a ring of chairs equidistant around a spherical projection node. The design was meant to signal equality. It mostly signaled distrust. Cambria entered without bowing. She offered a polite smile to each delegate as she passed, and the effect rippled like a contagion. Some nodded back. Others looked away. One, a red-plated envoy from the K-Layer Combine, visibly flinched. They were already off balance. Ambassador Peck dropped into his seat beside her and pulled out a paper bag. The crinkle was deliberate. Sura remained standing behind Cambria's chair, arms crossed behind her back, eyes scanning. A VRKNA host began the opening address in a lilting voice. "This council recognizes the heightened tensions since the Zorthari incident. Let it be known that this is a table of peace. No weapons. No provocations." Cambria raised an eyebrow but said nothing. The Zorthari delegate across from her, a high diplomat with gold-threaded facial mandibles, cleared his throat. "The Empire requests clarity. The human general has not apologized." "I wasn't aware clarity required apologies," Cambria said, smiling faintly. "We were dishonored." You were corrected, she replied. And only those unsure of their position fear correction. A low hiss slipped from the translator matrix. Several species shifted in their seats. The Haraxan envoy, with a neck like a coiled telescope, interjected. Perhaps now is the time to discuss the path forward. The human slap has echoed far. Trust is damaged. Cambria leaned forward, hands folded. Then let's fix it. Trust, after all, is forged in crisis. And if there's one thing humans excel at, it's making something useful out of broken things. The lights dimmed. The central sphere activated. A holographic map of galactic sectors appeared, with red zones marking conflict corridors. Trade lanes glowed in soft white. Recently disrupted systems blinked in amber. Cambria stood, motioning to one blinking sector. This route, Sector 12-9 fell, is key to 5 major empires, including Earth. It's being strangled by unresolved claims. The Zorthari delegate scoffed. Those claims were settled. Cambria cut him off. By war. She tapped a finger, and the projection shifted, showing casualty estimates, economic crashes, and planetary displacements. No one wins the next war, she said. But someone survives it better. Her voice, gentle but unwavering, laced each word with a subtext of brutal experience. She let silence follow. Then she said what no other delegate dared. We propose shared oversight. A rotating patrol of representatives from each system. No single authority. Equal presence. Equal teeth. Peck chewed a walnut. Like a galactic HOA, but with actual consequences. The Kalori envoy blinked. You would trust aliens to patrol your ships? Cambria met his gaze. We already do. We just call them neighbors. Another ripple moved through the room. Unease. Confusion. Respect. It was always hardest for species to understand humans weren't playing the same game. They were playing several. The Ver diplomat, a translucent being whose face flickered with mood, leaned in. Why offer peace now, when you clearly hold leverage? Because we didn't come for conquest, Cambria said. We came for understanding. And because leverage burns quickly if you don't know when to stop turning the screw. Behind her, Sura made the faintest movement. A blink. Cambria noticed. Peck noticed her noticing and slowly put down his trail mix. Sura murmured. Security breach. Micro-tremor in the station's core. We've been trapped. Cambria didn't turn. Her voice did not change. Details. Fusion core lockdown. Someone's engaged a deadman failsafe. Station detonation protocol initiated. Sealed from the inside. Peck muttered, diplomacy with detonators. Never goes out of fashion. The VRKNA host had gone pale, or whatever their version of pale was. This was a neutral site. Cambria's fingers danced along her datapad. Neutral's just another word for poorly supervised. A slow klaxon began to hum, low and distant. The chamber lights flickered. The Zorthari delegate stood, voice rising. You accuse us? We don't accuse, Cambria said. We prevent. She turned to the central projection and tapped her pad. New data replaced the map. A schematic of Tarnus Prime's fusion core appeared, overlaid with a countdown. 12 minutes. Peck stood and stretched. Well, I suppose that's long enough to clear the air. Cambria raised her voice, not loud but clear. Ladies, gentlemen, and otherwise, we have no time for blame. Someone wants to break this summit. Someone thinks Earth brought war. But Earth brought warning. She tapped again. A second display appeared. Dozens of orbital satellites, all Earth-made. Each had a beacon interface. All had one signal in common. They were watching. This station dies, and 10 empires lose access to every Terran data relay, every trade protocol. Your fleets will be isolated. Your AIs will revert to backup matrices. Earth pulls out of everything. The K-layer envoy hissed, You're threatening. No, Cambria said calmly. I'm offering context. The room erupted into frantic whispers. Delegates turned to their aides. The VRKNA host flailed for calm. The countdown ticked under 10 minutes. Sura opened her palm, revealing a transmitter. I can override. But we need a key. Peck looked at the Zorthari. Who brought the bomb? Silence. Then the Haraxan delegate stood, shaking. Our extremist faction. They feared Earth's rise. They thought framing the Zorthari would ignite a second cleansing war. Cambria said nothing for a moment. Then, give us the key. He did. Sura worked quickly. The countdown paused at 6 minutes. Emergency lockdown lifted. Cambria exhaled once. Then turned to the circle of shocked representatives. This is what humans call a teachable moment. The Zorthari delegate stared at her. You saved this room. No, she replied. We secured the future. There's a difference. Peck clapped once, slowly. Shall we vote on the patrol thing now? They didn't. Not right away. But no one left. Not one. Hours later, after protocols were restored and the summit recessed, Cambria returned to the Everquiet. She sat alone for a while, coffee cooling beside her, gaze fixed on nothing. Sura entered silently. That was bold. Cambria nodded. Too bold, maybe. No, Sura said. Just enough. Peck joined them, flopping onto the couch. So we almost exploded. But also, we maybe saved the galaxy. We gave them a mirror, Cambria said. Whether they look into it is their choice. Outside, the stars watched. Cold. Constant. And one by one, old alliances began to fracture. New ones, built from shaken pride and rising respect, began to form. Humanity hadn't used weapons. But it had come armed. With leverage. With timing. And with the kind of diplomacy that left scars without firing a shot. The galaxy, once deaf to Earth's voice, now listened with an unease it had never known. The slap had cracked the mask. The summit had torn the curtain. And now, in the weeks that followed Tarnus Prime, the true shape of humanity began to emerge. Not from weapons, not from conquest, but from the echo of restraint held like a blade just behind the smile. General Cambria Ward stood alone on the observation deck of the Everquiet. Her reflection ghosted in the glass beside the stars. The Terran flag, once so modest in the roster of interstellar symbols, now drew glances and second thoughts in every corner of known space. She didn't smile. Not yet. Behind her, the faint whir of the door signaled the entrance of Ambassador Peck, this time without a snack in hand. For once, his face lacked its usual cheer. He held a datapad loosely, like it might bite. They want peace, he said quietly. Cambria didn't turn. They should have wanted it before someone tried to cook us inside a diplomatic station. They're offering everything we asked. Sector access. Mutual patrols. Even tech exchange. He paused. Zorthari included. Now she turned, slowly, her eyes sharp and measuring. That fast? Peck nodded. Terrified. Especially after we mentioned the Echo Protocol. Cambria's silence was weighty. Peck shifted uneasily. You know we never used it. They don't even know if it's real. That's the point. She walked past him, heading toward the command table at the heart of the bridge. Fear works better than facts. It makes people prepare for what they can't see. She activated the table. Dozens of systems blinked to life, each a delicate piece of an increasingly complicated puzzle. Supply chains. Energy grids. Refugee routes. Every empire now waited for Earth's signature before finalizing anything of consequence. Not because Earth demanded it, but because no one dared move without accounting for what humans might do next. Lieutenant Sura entered quietly, nodded once, and approached the console. VRKNA diplomatic ships are en route to Earth for formal treaty ceremonies. 3 more species have requested trade seats. Zorthari security fleet just stood down. Cambria glanced up. No incidents. 1. A scout vessel pinged us. Cloaked. Peck raised a brow. Cloaked? That's aggressive. Sura smiled faintly. It cloaked right after it realized it had been pinged back. Cambria allowed herself a rare smirk. Lesson reinforced. Across the quadrant, empires whispered behind closed doors. Council chambers echoed with debates that sounded less like policy and more like theology. What were humans? Why had they waited so long? Why had they smiled so easily, walked so softly, and spoken so few threats? Because Earth never needed to conquer the galaxy. It needed the galaxy to conquer itself, trying to figure Earth out. That was the trap. Cambria deactivated the display and looked at her team. The summit is in 72 hours. They want fireworks. We'll give them silence. Let them project their fears onto that void. Peck sighed. I miss the days when we were the weird, irrelevant species that brought casseroles to trade talks. We still are, Cambria said. But now they ask for the recipe with trembling hands. Earth's delegation arrived to the Grand Assembly of the Allied Stars under an escort of 12 warships, none of them Earth's. That was part of the performance. Let them guard what they feared. The chamber was colossal, carved into the heart of a hollowed-out asteroid known as the Quiet Star, where diplomacy had begun centuries ago. Now, at long last, Earth stood at its center. Cambria walked down the aisle with a stride as calm as gravity, her coat fluttering slightly in the artificial wind, her hands gloved, her face serene. Behind her, Peck adjusted his tie, whispering to himself, and Sura walked like a shadow. The gathered representatives watched her like one watches the eye of a dormant volcano, awed, anxious, pretending not to fear eruption. The VRKNA host welcomed them. We recognize the rise of Earth as a stabilizing force in galactic affairs. We gather today not to elevate, but to acknowledge. Cambria stepped forward. Her voice was low, but it carried, threaded with command and conviction. Earth does not seek elevation. We seek reckoning. For every treaty ignored, every warning dismissed, every dismissal spoken behind a condescending smile. She paused, letting the words fall like pebbles into a still pond. We watched. We listened. We endured. Murmurs stirred. The Zorthari delegate shifted uneasily. And now, she continued, we act. The chamber froze. Cambria touched a control on her sleeve. The projection above her flared to life. Not weapons, not threats. Footage. Clean, clear, chronological. It began with a clip of a Terran mining station overrun by pirates. Pirates funded by a Zorthari shell company. Then a diplomatic transmission dismissed with laughter. Then a soldier's funeral. Then a humanitarian convoy destroyed because of a falsified sensor report from a Kalori scout. Image after image. None doctored. None exaggerated. Cambria let the silence hang. Let them feel the story they'd forced Earth to swallow. We were tested, she said, voice low. And we did not scream. We remembered. Peck stepped forward now, clearing his throat. And in the spirit of that memory, we offer a simple condition. The room leaned forward. No first strikes. No preemptive wars. Violate this, and Earth walks. Cambria added, and we never return. That, they understood. For Earth to leave was now more terrifying than its arrival. Silence followed, long and deep. Then the Zorthari delegate stood, slowly, and bowed. One by one, others followed. Sura's hand twitched near her sidearm, not in fear, but in readiness. Old habits. After the session, back in their private quarters, Cambria sat in the dark, sipping from a ceramic cup. No celebration. No toasts. Peck joined her, holding a datapad. You know, this could work. Real alliances. Shared power. Trade. Harmony. It could, she said. Sura entered quietly. Echo protocol. Cambria didn't move. Still dormant. They suspect it's always watching, Sura said. That's enough. Peck lowered the pad. So what now? Humanity's first real peace. We're not the underdogs anymore. Cambria looked at him, and for a moment, something raw flickered behind her eyes. We never were, she said. We just let them believe it. The door chimed. A messenger arrived with a data scroll, ancient by design, symbolic in gesture. It bore the seals of 5 empires. Cambria opened it. A joint proposal. One line highlighted in blue. Earth shall have authority to appoint the next interstellar arbitration chair. Peck laughed. They gave us the gavel. Cambria didn't smile. We've always had it, she said softly. We just hid it behind a handshake. That night, she stood again on the observation deck, alone. The stars remained indifferent. But they were quieter now, somehow. She touched the glass. Thought of the commander she'd lost, the treaties ignored, the insults swallowed with wine. And she whispered, not to the galaxy, but to the ghosts watching behind her eyes. You were right. We didn't win with fire. She closed her eyes. We became it. And far away, in the hidden corridors of power, old empires rewrote their doctrines. Children were taught new names for strength. And every diplomat who dared face a human did so with a fresh awareness. The most dangerous predator is the one who makes you laugh before it bites. Cambria Ward smiled. But only with her teeth.